A tale unfolds of Duchess Alexandra de Arno, the revered daughter of Sanctus Bianca and war hero Zachary. A man secretly reflects on his deep love for his one and only confidant, a woman with silver blue hair. A delicate silver necklace with a single black pearl dangles from a woman's hand. The silver-haired woman gently places the necklace into the blonde-haired man's hand, telling him not to worry. Her hands carefully secure the necklace within his, a tender gesture of trust. Smiling warmly, the silver-haired woman makes him a promise to return the necklace to her when she comes back. He clutches the precious keepsake tightly to his chest, his grip full of emotion. The man recalls how her soothing smile calmed his anxiety, treating him like a younger sibling. Alexandra's serene and confident expression shines as she gazes at him. A report is delivered to the king in his throne room, announcing grim news about Duchess Alexandra de Arno. A knight tearfully presents a blood-soaked cloth, a devastating token from the battlefield. On the day he learns of her death, the king, clutching her necklace, breaks down in tears on his throne. Overwhelmed by grief, the young king collapses in sorrow on his lonely throne. Tears stream down the king's face as he is consumed by utter despair. Heavy footsteps approach the throne of the feeble king, who has no one left to support him. The king looks up from his throne, his face etched with fear and vulnerability. He remembers being unable to speak out against the overwhelming pressure of the nobles. A hooded figure violently seizes the powerless king from his throne. Pinned and helpless, the king furiously demands to be released, questioning their audacity. Two cloaked men easily overpower the struggling king, silencing his protests. His crown clatters to the floor as he's thrown down, a symbol of his lost authority. As the king lies defeated, a mocking voice asks if he still believes himself to be a king. A man with brown hair forces a glass of wine to the king's lips, who whispers Alexandra's name in defeat. A burning liquid is poured down his throat, scorching him from the inside as he chokes. He grips the necklace one last time, a final desperate clench of his hand. As darkness consumes him, the king wonders if this is his end, his last thought a memory of Alexandra's smile. The king lies dead, the spilled goblet beside him, his hand still holding the delicate necklace. His life fades away with one final, whispered thought of Alexandra's name. The scene shifts to a tranquil forest, where a lone rabbit rests in a peaceful clearing. An arrow suddenly zips past the startled rabbit, barely missing its mark. As the rabbit flees, a person with long, flowing silver hair watches it disappear into the bushes. A silver-haired archer with green eyes gasps in surprise, realizing her shot missed. The archer pauses, her expression thoughtful as she surveys the forest. She pokes the ground where her arrow landed, lamenting that she missed the rabbit with such pretty fur. Winking confidently, the archer readies her bow once more. Her eyes widen in sudden shock as she spots something unexpected in the woods. Confused, the archer turns to find the blonde-haired king lying unconscious in the undergrowth. The king lies peacefully in the grass, his regal attire starkly out of place in the wilderness. An elderly man with white hair carries a basket of laundry outside a rustic house. The silver-haired archer suddenly appears behind the old man, shouting his name and asking for help. Surprised, the man, Vincent, asks why Miss Alexandra isn't hunting, while she urgently demands he get a cart. Alexandra's eyes shine with excitement as she declares she's found something incredible. A memory surfaces of the king, alone and broken, huddled in the darkness. The king's past self looks up, his eyes filled with anguish and despair. In a flashback, Alexandra gazes at the king with a gentle, reassuring smile. The troubled king rests his head against her, finding a moment of comfort in her presence. The king recalls kneeling before Alexandra, feeling unworthy as nobles mocked her for leading the army. He remembers his despair, believing the voice of a puppet king like him would never be heard. A memory of Alexandra, wearing his necklace, her gaze firm and determined. With a confident smile, Alexandra looks ahead, ready to face whatever comes next. In a flashback, Alexandra recalls dreaming of knighthood to lead the army, just like her father, Zachary de Arno. She continues, saying she wanted to protect her loved ones in the name of a saint, like her mother, Bianca de Arno. The young, blonde-haired king listens to her with wide, captivated blue eyes. Clasping his hands, Alexandra says that just like her parents, she now leads the army to protect the people she cherishes. She smiles triumphantly, realizing this means she has fulfilled her childhood dream. Changing the subject, Alexandra tells the king she wants to give him something special. The delicate silver necklace with the single black pearl dangles from her fingers. She presents the necklace to the king, whose eyes widen in surprise. Gently placing the necklace in his hand, she reminds him that it always finds its way back to her. Standing together in a rose garden, she promises to cast a spell on it, ensuring she will return to his side. Alexandra solemnly swears to return alive and become His Majesty's voice and sword forevermore as he clutches the necklace. The memory fades, leaving the king weeping in a dark void, reaching out desperately while clutching her keepsake. His hand clenches into a tight, determined fist. In the present, the young, silver-haired Alexandra looks down at him, confused by his reaction. As she holds his hand, the king begins to stir in his bed. His eyes flutter open, and tears immediately stream down his face as he gazes at her. The young Alexandra is shocked by his tearful awakening. The king's thoughts race as he wonders if this is truly Alexandra. With a jolt, he sits up abruptly, grabbing her hand in disbelief. Overcome with emotion and confusion, he covers his mouth with a gasp. A coughing fit seizes him, and Alexandra gently pats his back, urging him not to speak. He looks up at her, his tear-filled eyes swimming with memories and disbelief. A blood-red flashback overwhelms him as he remembers hearing of Alexandra's death and drinking a bottle of poison. He stumbles from the bed, his mind reeling with the certainty that he must have died. With a soft tap, Alexandra places a chair by his bed and asks if he is able to write. The king nods weakly in response. She hands him a quill and parchment, asking him to write down his name. After he writes, she reads his name and remarks that it's the same as the crown prince. He looks up at her, clarifying that it has been a year since he took the throne. The young Alexandra clutches her chest, completely stunned by his revelation. The king asks if she isn't the Duchess, the daughter of the late Duke Zachary, and suddenly realizes something is terribly wrong. He understands that the girl before him is a much younger Alexandra, not the woman he knew and revered. The black pearl necklace is dangled before his eyes. The young Alexandra holds it up, demanding to know where he got her necklace and why he possesses it. A memory of the older Alexandra's promise to return echoes in his mind as he stares at the necklace, stunned. He flashes back to the moment his Alexandra gave him the necklace, while the younger one before him says her own name. Drip. The sound of a candle dripping startles the king from his reverie. Alexandra sits beside his bed, studying the mysterious necklace he was holding. Vincent expresses his astonishment, recalling how a young Alexandra used to bring home shiny fruits just because they were pretty. A cute memory shows little Alexandra presenting a frog to him, exclaiming how cute it is. Vincent finishes his thought, noting that now she has brought home a lovely boy instead. Alexandra explains she brought him to their house because it was closer than the castle, admitting she's out of her depth. Together, Alexandra and Vincent carefully help the unconscious king into their home. Vincent looks on with concern as they support the king's slumped form. He calls out to Alexandra, pointing out that the king dropped something from his hand. Squeeze. As she supports the king, Alexandra's eyes widen with a sudden realization. She confronts the now awake king, demanding to know where he got the necklace. She examines the black pearl, noting that she doesn't have her own necklace with her at the moment. In a fragmented memory, the king desperately tries to explain that she, Alexandra, was the one who gave it to him. His memory becomes clearer as he recalls her promise that the necklace was spelled to always return to her. With tears in his eyes, he emotionally declares his identity. Cyril de Severin. A jolt. He repeats his full name to the startled Alexandra, clutching his shirt. The king laments that while Alexandra has returned, none of their shared memories have come with her. A memory flashes to a younger Cyril sitting alone and desolate in a beautiful garden gazebo. In a painful flashback, a tearful young Cyril begs his mother not to leave him behind. His mother comforts him, explaining she must return to her homeland, but that he should never forget his destiny. She reminds him that he is the one and only heir chosen by His Majesty the King. She promises him he will one day become a great ruler who brings peace to the entire continent. The flashback shifts to a slightly older, stoic Cyril, his childhood tears gone. The memory continues as a young Alexandra appears before him in a grand room, and he asks who she is. She smiles and introduces herself as Alexandra, daughter of Duke Zachary d'Arnaud, his new playmate. Standing up, the young prince questions if House Arnaud is unaware of the rumors about him. A wide shot shows the young prince and Alexandra standing apart in the large empty room. The prince bluntly tells the surprised Alexandra that he doesn't need a playmate. He coldly adds that it's especially true for a crown prince who could disappear any day. He walks away with finality, leaving Alexandra standing alone in the chamber. The scene transitions to an overview of the stately castle grounds. In the throne room, Cyril sits beside a queen, overhearing the gossip of nobles. The nobles stand nearby, their conversation clearly audible to the young prince on his throne. They decry selling off the heir's mother like a pawn, calling it an insult to Severin. They worry about the repercussions should His Highness Cyril ever ascend the throne. The nobles urge King Odalie to appoint a legitimate successor quickly, as Alexandra listens with a serious expression. Alexandra calls out to the prince as he walks away down a hall. He turns back, cynically asking if she thinks a powerless crown prince is so easy to use. He dismisses her coldly, stating he has no intention of speaking with her. He walks past her without another glance, leaving her behind. Alexandra watches him go, her expression unwavering and thoughtful. The memory shifts to Cyril painting at an easel, surrounded by maids. He looks up and spots Alexandra in a red hood, shyly peeking at him from behind a rose bush. He recalls how she appeared before him every single day. He remembers her watching him from a distance in the hallway. Every single day. She would even watch him practice archery without ever saying a word. He sees her watering the garden roses, her presence a constant, silent fixture in his life. The young prince remembers the fear he felt, shouting that her constant watching was scary. Spotting her in a tree, he angrily demands that she say something if she has something to say. From her perch, Alexandra innocently reminds him that he was the one who didn't want to talk. He shouts for her to get down from the dangerous tree, his anger mixed with concern. Tap. She lands gracefully before him with a flourish, startling him into silence. He remembers her telling him her reasons had nothing to do with him being the crown prince. She explains with heartfelt sincerity that she just wants to be someone to him. She wanted to be someone who could share his joy and comfort his sadness, leaving him deeply moved. He had asked her then, his heart open, if he could just stay by her side. Back in the present, Cyril reflects on how much her words meant to his lonely self. He thinks that because of her, his childhood filled with fear became the brightest part of his life. He trembles, the devastating realization hitting him. This Alexandra doesn't remember him at all. Hick. He chokes back a sob, covering his mouth in a futile attempt to hide his grief. Hick. Overcome with sorrow, he bends over as Alexandra watches with a troubled expression. As Vincent joins her, Alexandra suggests the boy might be unwell and unable to control his emotions. Vincent looks on with a serious expression, asking Alexandra what she intends to do with the boy. Vincent asks Alexandra if the necklace was a gift from her when she left for war. Alexandra finds this even more confusing, wondering if Cyril stole the necklace from that person. In a glowing memory, her father, Zachary d'Arnaud, is hailed as the strongest knight in all of Severin. Holding the pearl, she wonders if Cyril truly stole the necklace from her father. As the next heir of the Arnaud duchy, she vows to uncover his true identity and purpose. Meanwhile, the king sits alone in his dimly lit room, looking downcast. Grab? Alexandra seizes Cyril's hand, startling him as he sits on the bed. He looks up at her with wide, surprised eyes as she leans over him. With Vincent standing behind her, Alexandra warns Cyril to listen carefully, threatening him not to harm Vincent while she's away. She leans in close, promising to hunt him down until the day he dies if he disobeys. She turns and walks away, leaving Cyril watching her from his window. He laments his rotten luck, realizing the Alexandra of this era doesn't possess the necklace. He turns from the window with a sigh of frustration. Overwhelmed, he covers his mouth while leaning against the window frame. He sits by the window, lost in thought. Cyril recalls the loneliness he felt at the age he first had to sleep by himself, away from his mother. He wonders if his peaceful sleep was because the room felt different, or if he was simply exhausted from his long journey. Lying awake, he stares at the ceiling in quiet contemplation. He concludes that maybe his peace came from the simple relief of having her back, even if she doesn't know him. He admits he's a little hurt by how terrifying she was, picturing her threatening face. He drifts off to sleep, thinking that night was more peaceful than any he could remember. The sun rises over a beautiful, distant castle. The stately Arnaud Castle, home of the Arnaud Duchy, stands brilliantly in the morning light. The courtyard of the castle is busy with servants and workers going about their day. Lucy, the head maid of House Arnaud, stands with a warm, welcoming smile. Bang Lucy bursts into her room, cheerfully wishing her lady a good morning. Peeking through the window, she notes that her lady has no swordsmanship or riding lessons scheduled. Sitting on the bed, She excitedly announces she's prepared a color that will go wonderfully with her lady's eyes. She holds up a beautiful green dress, explaining it's made from fabric that was just dyed this spring. My lady, Lucy and another maid pull back the covers, shocked by what they don't find. Discovering a pillow decoy, a sweating Lucy calls out for her lady in dismay. Tap. A much younger Alexandra runs happily down a grand hallway. Alexandra sits with Baron Rangdong, the butler of House Arno, who confirms the boy is at Vincent's home. The Baron begins to analyze the boy's origins, mentioning his unique appearance. He notes the boy's tea-colored skin, a trait shared with the former Queen of Navarre and exclusive to the people of Castile. The Baron thinks to himself that Vincent was the former butler of Arno Castle, recalling his past service. Pondering, he remarks that there are no high-ranking Castilian nobles or merchants in Arno territory. He deduces that the boy may not be a Castilian who lived in the region. Alexandra theorizes that if the necklace thief also kidnapped the boy, he could be another victim. She suddenly wonders if that's why he was crying so wretchedly before. A memory of the king's tearful, desperate face flashes through her mind. Sitting on the couch, Alexandra asks herself if she was too quick to judge him. The Baron explains that with the Duke at war and the Madam in the capital, it's right to be suspicious of any trespasser on the estate. He reminds her that she must never forget the name of Arno comes from her. Alexandra listens to his counsel with a solemn and resolute expression. Clutching the necklace at her collar, she declares that she needs to confirm something. Her eyes widen in sudden, shocked realization. The scene flashes between her running through the halls and Cyril sleeping alone in his room. As Cyril sleeps, a dark memory surfaces, revealing his full name, Cyril Irion de Siverin. A voice echoes in the darkness of Cyril's sleep, asking if he'll just lie there while his killers make their move, jolting his eyes open in terror. He lies paralyzed, his eyes wide with fear. A dark, hooded figure with white hair looms over him, commanding him to look at the past he never knew and the present moment. The mysterious figure leans in closer, its presence overwhelming the terrified Cyril. Thump! Massive, scaled serpent begins to coil around Cyril's body. The voice commands him to find it as the serpent's grip tightens. Completely constricted, Cyril is warned to find the object or repeat the death of the future. His eye reflects the swirling, nightmarish void. Thud! Cyril bolts upright in bed, gasping as he wakes from the terrifying dream. He tumbles to the floor as Vincent appears in the doorway, asking if he fell. Sweating and breathless, Cyril lies on the floor, still reeling from the nightmare. Vincent looks on, thinking that whatever was beside Cyril's head has now disappeared. A disoriented Cyril looks up, wondering if the entire harrowing experience was just a dream. Vincent helps him up from the floor, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. As his stomach rumbles loudly, Vincent smiles, telling a blushing Cyril it makes sense he's hungry after sleeping for 2 whole days. Vincent offers to let some potato soup cool down for him and tells him to come downstairs slowly. As Vincent leaves, Cyril remains kneeling on the floor, watching him go. Cyril touches his face, thinking to himself that his cheek feels numb. He recalls the chilling details of his dream, the cold hand, the tingling sensation, and the spell-like words, all of which felt terrifyingly real. Leaning weakly against the wall, he remembers the words of the one who poisoned him. In a painful flashback, Noble sneers that after Duchess Alexandra left, he was nothing but livestock waiting to be devoured. He remembers his own death, connecting it and Alexandra's deployment to the battlefield as part of a single, devastating plan. Still shaken, he makes his way unsteadily down the stairs. He clenches his fist. With newfound determination, he resolves that if his past death and current life are connected, he must discover why he has returned to Arno now. The scene shifts to a training yard, where an instructor yells at a trainee named Alec to concentrate on his opponent's exposed torso. Thwack! A silver-haired girl expertly blocks a strike, and the instructor praises her successful defense. As a silver-haired man arrives, onlookers in the background note that Lady Alexandra is there. 2 young squires gossip, wondering why she's training when she had supposedly canceled her plans to prepare for marriage. One excitedly asks the other if this means they'll see her dressed up beautifully again, like she was on All Hallows' Eve. They swoon, fantasizing about Alexandra in a gorgeous blue dress, which they call the headmaid's masterpiece. The squires ponder her impending marriage, questioning what kind of lucky man will become her husband. From a distance, Cyril listens to their conversation, sweat beading on his face. Across the yard, Alexandra wipes sweat from her face with a towel after her training session. Cyril struggles to push a heavy cart of goods across the cobblestone courtyard as Vincent follows. A voice calls out to Vincent. Vincent, who stops and turns. Alexandra approaches, asking Vincent if Cyril is feeling better, and Vincent confirms he is. Vincent praises Cyril as a quick learner who gets things done with a bright attitude. He adds that thanks to Cyril, his own work has become much easier, and Alexandra listens with a thoughtful expression. Cyril stands nervously beside his cart, overhearing their conversation. Tap. Alexandra places a hand on his shoulder, startling him as she asks if his memory has returned. Cyril looks back at her, surprised by her sudden proximity. For a fleeting moment, he imagines excitedly calling out her name. He quickly decides against it, thinking his voice sounds wrong, and that it's better to feign amnesia. Alexandra surmises that his mind seems to have changed. She continues, guessing he now believes the real thief who stole the necklace also hurt him and left him for dead. She explains that, while he looked at her fiercely at first, he seems to have concluded she isn't the enemy. Cyril looks at her, stunned by her accurate but misdirected line of reasoning. Looking at him with her wide green eyes, Alexandra simply says, "That's nice." Cyril stares back at her, at a loss for words. Lost in thought, Cyril closes his eyes, a memory surfacing. His eyes flash open as he recalls Alexandra's bright, smiling face. He remembers a younger version of himself, secretly wondering if he'd ever catch up to Alexandra's height, watching her grow up beside him. A close-up reveals Alexandra's wide, startled green eyes. In a daydream, a fully grown Cyril imagines standing before her, wondering how she will look at him then. He smiles, hoping that when that time comes, she will see him in a different light. The fantasy shatters as he realizes he's still a boy, holding her hand in the present. Wah! Cyril's face flushes with a deep blush. He yanks his hand back in embarrassment, startling Alexandra with his sudden movement. A black-haired man calls out, asking where Alec and Alexandra are, interrupting the moment. Alexandra quickly responds, "I'm here, Sir Robert. I'm coming." She tells a still blushing Cyril she'll visit his house later and wishes him a safe trip home. As Cyril and Vincent leave with the cart, narration reveals that back then, Alexandra couldn't become a knight. Cyril looks down thoughtfully at a bouquet of white lilies. He ponders if Alexandra's current knight training is somehow connected to the future he knows. Watching Vincent's back, Cyril resolves that he can't be separated from this person. Cyril recalls Vincent's identity as the former head butler of Arno and the family's emotional pillar, realizing what happens in the near future. A dark vision flashes, showing Alexandra clutching a dying Vincent, revealing she will soon give up her dream of knighthood. In the present, Alexandra quietly polishes a large, dented shield on the training grounds. Two young squires rush over, calling her Lady Alexandra, and insisting they do the polishing for her. Alexandra kindly refuses, explaining it's her turn, but the squires protest, citing her upcoming bridal lessons. A sharp voice shouts, "Hey, stop that at once!" startling the squires. The Arno family's swordsmanship instructor, Sir Robert, sternly reminds the squires that on the training ground, she is Squire Alexandra. Sir Robert dismisses the two squires, Thomas and Jean, questioning their duties, and they scurry away with an apology. From a distance, Cyril and Vincent observe the scene unfolding in the courtyard. Alexandra glances over, thinking to herself that he's following Vincent again today. Sir Robert approaches her, asking if the boy with Vincent is the one who had her necklace. Vincent pats a nervous Cyril on the back, as Alexandra confirms his name is Cyril and notes his poor condition. Sir Robert relays Vincent's report that Cyril is getting better, causing Cyril to clutch his head in frustration, thinking he is far from okay. Sir Robert expresses concern about letting an amnesiac wander the castle, but Alexandra confirms it's true he only remembers his name. Alexandra explains to Sir Robert that she suspected Cyril might be a spy, given the ongoing war with Sabrank. She confesses she's been secretly leaving the castle at night to visit Vincent's house and watch over Cyril, all without Headmaid Lucy's knowledge. That night, Cyril tosses and turns in his sleep. A mysterious cloaked figure watches over him, musing that if his tears were a lie, it was an extraordinary performance. Back at the training ground, Alexandra tells Sir Robert she sent a letter to her father about the necklace and awaits his reply to learn the truth. She resolves that a decision about Cyril's treatment can be made after she hears back from her father. Sir Robert offers a knowing, supportive smile. He looks at her with an expression of quiet encouragement. Patting her head gently, he reassures her that she will surely make a fine knight. Sir Robert stands over her, urging her not to give up because many people are rooting for her. Alexandra recalls Sir Robert asking her about Vincent's long history of service to her father, Sir Robert recounts a time before Alexandra's birth, when her father was at war and Arno Castle was under siege. He explains that even during that dangerous time, Vincent remained steadfastly by her mother's side. He describes Vincent as a parental figure to her parents and a grandfather to her, showing him holding a baby Alexandra. A sudden splash of water echoes in her memory. A younger Cyril looks on with wide, startled eyes. Alexandra recalls Vincent's death, thinking that though the adults called it a tragic accident, she blamed herself for a long time. She remembers how the trauma left her unable to ride horses, a passion she once loved dearly. Looking back, she realizes with sad maturity that some things in the world are simply beyond a child's power to change. She reflects on giving up her passion 10 years ago as self-punishment, wishing she'd been faster so Vincent could have stayed with her longer. Alexandra clasps her hands in prayerful regret, wishing she had been stronger in the past. Descending the stairs, Cyril pauses, with a look of profound contemplation. Vincent pats down a pillow, confusedly wondering where he could have put his glasses. Cyril kindly hands Vincent his glasses as the older man laments his growing forgetfulness. Putting his glasses on, Vincent thanks Cyril for his help and announces he's stepping out for a while. Cyril moves to go with him, and Vincent turns in surprise, asking if he's coming along again. Vincent smiles warmly, assuring Cyril he enjoys the company but advises him not to push himself too hard. The two walk together along a path, leaving the house behind them as riders pass in the distance. A heavy sadness fills Cyril's eyes as they walk. Vincent points toward the fields, informing Cyril that it must be time for the young lady's horseback riding lesson. Alexandra is shown riding with skill and joy, a wide, free-spirited smile on her face. Cyril and Vincent watch from a distant hill as Alexandra rides her horse across the green landscape. An expression of wistful longing crosses Cyril's face as he watches her disappear. Cyril reflects that this very event is the reason he is certain he returned 10 years into the past. CSK, two squires, Thomas and Jean, share a tense conspiratorial look. Cyril and Vincent arrive in a town square, where a group of villagers has gathered to speak with Vincent. A distressed woman explains to Vincent how her son secretly sold the calf meant for their land rent. Vincent calmly advises her to explain the situation to the steward Baron Ringdong, suspecting her son needed money for her medicine. Sitting apart from the crowd, Cyril overhears another villager ask Vincent about a poor apple harvest. Cyril finally understands why the retired steward walks the domain each day, to personally tend to his people. He sees how the people of Arno confide in Vincent, viewing him as a parental figure for the entire domain. A bead of sweat traces down Cyril's cheek as the profound realization washes over him. Cyril understands the villagers' trust is built on their faith in a reasonable lord, a faith Vincent nurtures. He flashes back to his lonely time on the throne, wishing he'd had someone like Vincent by his side. In the present, Cyril sits alone, a somber figure watching the happy, laughing villagers. He wonders if he could have become a trusted lord like Duke Arno if he had had such a guide. Thwack! A gloved hand suddenly clamps over Cyril's mouth from behind, cutting his thoughts short. He's violently dragged into a secluded alleyway and thrown to the ground. The squires Thomas and Jean stand over him, sneering as they identify him as the Castian brat Alexandra found. They pin him down, aggressively demanding to know who sent him and which side he's spying for. The squires press him further, insisting he confess to being a spy. Terrified, Cyril thinks to himself, utterly bewildered by the accusation of being a spy, the black-haired squire Jean smacks Thomas on the head, calling him an idiot for his interrogation tactics. Thomas ignores him and grabs Cyril's collar, accusing him of being an infiltrator sent by his home country. Cyril recalls how he was always treated as a foreigner because of his skin, even in his own homeland. A wave of panic hits him as he realizes he left Vincent alone with strangers and must get back to him. Driven by desperation, Cyril fights back, shoving his attackers and managing to land a punch on Jean. Arg! Jean cries out in pain and shock from the unexpected blow. Cyril bites Thomas's arm, forcing him to let go as the squire yells in pain. He shoves them both back as they shout at him to stop. Clutching his injured hand, Jean yells at Cyril, demanding to know why he's running if he's innocent. Cyril ignores the shouts and makes a desperate dash to escape the alley. He is quickly tackled from behind and slammed back onto the stone ground. A chilling memory of his past murder resurfaces, and he fears he's about to be helplessly hunted down again. Jean draws his sword, furiously threatening to cut Cyril's ankle so he can never run again. The other squire pins Cyril down as the menacing blade is held against his leg. With a look of pure rage, Jean brings the sword swinging down towards Cyril. Clang! A long, dark-haired man suddenly appears, blocking the strike with his own blade. The newcomer furiously whirls on the squire, demanding to know what he thinks he's doing. He scathingly questions if attacking an unarmed boy is the chivalry they were taught in Arno. The squire Jean stares in wide-eyed shock, his sword stopped just inches from Cyril. Sir Robert furiously scolds the two squires, declaring they are a shame to the knighthood he trained, calling them a pack of thugs. His words hit both the squires and a captive Cyril with stunned silence. Dropping to his knees, Thomas begs for forgiveness as Sir Robert glares down at them. Sir Robert leads the disgraced squires away, though Jean casts a final, conflicted look back. Kneeling before Cyril, Sir Robert gently asks if he is able to walk. He carefully checks Cyril's chin for injuries, his touch making the boy flinch slightly. Sir Robert helps a shaken Cyril back to his feet. Cyril stumbles against Sir Robert, letting out a pained cough as the older man looks on with concern. Holding onto his arm, Cyril looks away flustered as Sir Robert offers his deepest apologies for the squire's actions. Sir Robert watches with a somber expression as Cyril walks away alone. A look of despair crosses Cyril's face as a troubling thought begins. Standing alone, Cyril wonders bleakly how someone like him could possibly fight against the coming tide of fate. A voice calls out her name, and a smiling Alexandra turns from the horse she was petting in the stables. The voice belongs to Sir Robert, who approaches her with a serious look. Alexandra asks Sir Robert what happened, her expression turning to one of concern. Sir Robert informs her that he has something to tell her concerning Cyril. Alexandra's eyes widen in shock upon hearing the news. Later that night, the scene shifts to Vincent's house. A hooded Alexandra confesses to Vincent that her careless words about Cyril being a spy led to him being beaten by the squires. She continues with grim determination, saying that regardless of whether he's a spy or not, she feels responsible for the awful thing that happened to him, a thought that torments her as she watches him sleep. In his bed, Cyril thinks to himself that it was his own fault for not being able to defend himself properly. The next morning, Vincent helps Cyril by draping a warm cloak over his shoulders. Alexandra arrives, announcing that she has decided to escort them both to keep them out of trouble. As Cyril looks on in surprise, Vincent chuckles, remarking that he never thought he'd live to see this day. Cyril's worry deepens, fearing that Alexandra will now be caught up in the danger surrounding Vincent. Alexandra asks Vincent if he's heading out again, and he cheerfully confirms he is. At a desk, Vincent looks over an open book, preparing for the day's work. Vincent explains to Alexandra that the weirs on the Arno River farmland are malfunctioning due to heavy summer rains. Deciding on a course of action, Vincent announces they will go inspect the condition of the embankments. Splash! They arrive to find the river violently crashing against a weakened rock dike. The three stand precariously on the narrow, crumbling embankment overlooking the raging water. Vincent notes that the wooden supports for the dike are heavily waterlogged and unstable. As Vincent meticulously takes notes, Cyril and Alexandra watch the dangerous current with growing unease. Cyril observes the churning water, realizing with a start that the current is far stronger than he'd anticipated. Suddenly, Cyril's foot slips on a wet rock, and he stumbles in shock. Wah! Alexandra catches him, shouting a warning about the slippery, unstable ground. Holding him steady, Alexandra urges Cyril to warn Vincent to be careful on the treacherous footing. Standing on the edge of disaster, narration marks this moment as a fateful encounter. A sudden gust of wind whips Vincent's glasses from his face, and he turns back with a look of pure shock. Both Cyril and Alexandra stare forward, their faces frozen in absolute horror at what they see. The ground beneath Vincent gives way as he stands perilously close to the raging torrent. His eyes widen in shock as he loses his balance, his glasses flying through the air. Alexandra and Cyril can only watch, paralyzed by terror, as the disaster unfolds. Pack! In a split second, Cyril shoves Alexandra out of the way with fierce determination. Cyril! Alexandra cries out as he sprints desperately along the crumbling dike. Splash Cyril lunges for Vincent, who has fallen into the violent river, and plunges in after him. Alexandra screams in terror, her cries for both Cyril and Vincent swallowed by the roar of the water. Powerless on the bank, Alexandra watches the churning rapids, screaming Cyril's name into the spray. As Cyril sinks into the dark water, his vision blurs, and he sees memories of Vincent that were never shared. On the crumbling bank, Alexandra stumbles in shock. She collapses to the ground as Vincent looks on. Her foot slips on the loose rocks at the edge of the embankment. The unstable ground gives way beneath Alexandra and a horrified Vincent. A gust of wind blows Vincent's glasses away as he turns back in utter shock. Alexandra stares forward, her face a mask of abject terror. Cyril reflects that watching Vincent be swept away must be how Alexandra felt when she lost her family, finally understanding her pain. He sees a vision of Alexandra in mourning as he himself sinks into the depths. Underwater, Cyril resolves that he won't let Vincent give up. Drifting toward the sinking man, he vows to ensure Vincent never gives up on his dreams again. With a desperate gasp, Cyril grabs hold of Vincent's coat. He struggles to hold on to the unconscious Vincent as they are tossed by the current. That night, the river rages past the town under a starry sky. A woman holding a small child on a balcony looks down, asking what? What, Grandpa? From her high vantage point, she spots something in the churning water below. Cyril clings to Vincent, bracing them against a wooden support beam of a bridge. From the town above, a woman frantically screams for help. She cries that there's someone caught on the bridge leg as Cyril holds Vincent tight against the current. Sometime later, Cyril awakens in a sunlit room, lying in bed. Alexandra sits beside him, explaining that he held onto Vincent with a broken arm until their rescue. She reassures a dazed Cyril that Vincent is completely unharmed and already walking around. Overcome with emotion, Alexandra tearfully exclaims that she should have been the one to jump in, not him. She quickly apologizes for yelling, admitting she shouldn't have taken her feelings out on him. Alexandra bows her head, weeping with guilt and regret. Hunched over in her chair, she quietly laments what kind of pathetic knight she is. Cyril's bandaged hand gently touches her face, and he thinks of her gentleness and the life of pain she would have lived. With a tear in his eye, Cyril sincerely apologizes, saying he didn't mean to hurt her. He gently wipes a tear from her cheek with his bandaged thumb. Touching the jewelry at her neck, Alexandra explains that her necklace was a birth gift from her mother's closest friend. She describes it as a black pearl from the Castilian mountains, a gift she's had since birth. In a flashback, a younger Alexandra puts the necklace on her father, hoping it will ensure his safe return from war. After her father pats her head, she watches his knights ride away, reflecting that the necklace always finds its way back to her. In the present, Alexandra tells Cyril she received a letter from her father while he was unconscious. She holds out the sealed letter, revealing her father confirmed her necklace was never stolen or lost. Not even once. Cyril looks at the letter in disbelief as she hands it to him. Alexandra turns away, realizing the necklace she's worn her whole life couldn't be mistaken. The one she has now is not hers. The true necklace, a simple chain with a single black pearl, is shown. Leaning close, Alexandra tells Cyril the necklace belongs to him and she had no right to take it. Cyril blushes deeply, flustered by her sudden closeness. Alexandra looks at him with determined, shining green eyes. She places the black pearl necklace around his neck and asks for his forgiveness for doubting him. Stepping back, she earnestly repeats her plea for him to forgive her. Alexandra waits quietly, her expression earnest and hopeful. Cyril touches the cool pearl at his throat, considering her apology. He gives a slight, accepting nod. A warm, relieved smile spreads across Alexandra's face. She informs a surprised Cyril that he was unconscious for almost 4 days. With a bright smile, Alexandra extends her hand, cheerfully offering to help him get cleaned up. Looking bewildered, Cyril touches the new necklace as he takes in her offer. Her offer to help him bathe leaves Cyril blushing furiously, utterly speechless. In the bathhouse, Cyril stands nervously by the steaming tub, his arm still bandaged. Mortified, Cyril calls out her name in protest, as she watches him with a placid expression. As the door closes, a frantic Cyril wonders what on earth she meant by telling him to hold on. Completely overwhelmed, Cyril stares forward, his face burning with a deep blush. Pulling at his shirt, Cyril desperately tries to calm his racing heart. Now undressed by the tub, he tries to rationalize the situation, telling himself he's just an injured patient. Despite his efforts, Cyril remains flustered, nervously glancing toward the door. He turns away, face still flushed, unable to shake his embarrassment. Suddenly, Sir Robert enters the bathhouse, greeting a surprised Cyril, who recognizes his swordsmanship instructor. Cyril looks up, his expression a mixture of surprise and apprehension. Blushing, Cyril worries about the scandal that would erupt if word got out that Alexandra had tended to a man's bath. Sir Robert gently takes his wrist, asking if they should postpone if he's feeling unwell. Cyril recalls Alexandra's earlier words, remembering he's been bedridden for 4 days. The memory of her closeness makes him wonder with alarm if he smells bad. In a comical panic, a chibi Cyril frantically pleads with Sir Robert to let him wash. Splash! Sir Robert unceremoniously dumps a bucket of water over Cyril's head. While washing his back, Sir Robert notes that Cyril seems quite used to being cared for. He continues, observing that Cyril's physique suggests he has received night training. Sir Robert looks down with a serious, contemplative expression. Leaning in close, Sir Robert begins to tell Cyril something important. Sir Robert relays Alexandra's frantic actions, explaining that the moment Cyril jumped into the river, she ran straight to the castle for help. Sir Robert leans closer to the tense Cyril, continuing his story. Cyril's eyes widen in shock as he listens to Sir Robert's words. Sir Robert continues speaking, his profile etched with seriousness. He paints a grim picture of the heartbreak Cyril's family would feel if their search ended with his death. As a tear falls from Cyril's eye, narration reveals his only remaining family, after the death of the king and queen mother, was his grandmother, Queen O'Daly, who was assassinated just a year after ascending the throne as a child. The scene shifts to the town's bridge, where large nets hang over the churning river. An elderly nobleman in a green cloak, Baron Langdong, arrives on the scene. The woman who witnessed the rescue explains to the Baron that Cyril and Vincent were caught by the nets under the bridge. She confirms that the nets are the only reason both of them managed to survive the ordeal. The Baron asks if the nets are a permanent fixture, but the woman explains they're only hung during floods. She recounts how a pilgrim suggested the idea 10 years ago to save sheep that fall into the river. The system allows the townswomen to easily rescue any sheep that get swept away by the current. The woman smiles brightly, finishing her explanation of the life-saving nets. The Baron asks if the nets have saved a person before, and she confirms a pilgrim rescued someone long ago. She recalls the miracle of someone surviving. The woman calls out to the pensive Baron, pulling him from his thoughts. The Baron reveals he's searching for someone who went missing on the Arno River 10 years ago. Looking out towards the distant sea, he voices his hope that they might finally find the missing person here. The scene returns to Cyril, whose arm is being carefully rebandaged. Alexandra gently dabs his face with a cloth as he gets cleaned up. Vincent appears, overcome with emotion and weeping with relief. He pulls a startled Cyril into a tight hug as Alexandra watches with a gentle smile. Cyril is completely taken aback, his eyes wide in the emotional embrace. Alexandra looks on warmly while Vincent continues to cry on Cyril's shoulder. Her peaceful moment is interrupted as a man in a blue cape suddenly appears before her. Alexandra's eyes widen in shock and disbelief as she recognizes the person standing in front of her. The man in the blue cape holds a dagger with a slight smile, hoping someone has been keeping safe. He stands before a surprised Alexandra, greeting her after a long time. The man, wearing a black eye patch over his right eye, looks at her with a calm, knowing expression. In shock, Alexandra recognizes him, whispering the name, Pierre. Pierre smiles wryly, reminding her of what she's supposed to do when they meet. Holding his dagger forward, he smirks, asking if she's forgotten their arrangement. Alexandra watches Pierre with a serious expression as Cyril stands near the house in the background. From a distance, Cyril looks on with concern, sensing the growing tension. Cyril's eyes widen in horror as he witnesses Pierre lunging at Alexandra with his blade. Alexandra braces herself, her expression determined as the wind whips her hair. From the yard, Cyril firmly grips a thick wooden club. Without hesitation, he vaults over the fence, rushing to intervene. A gloved hand suddenly grabs the hilt of the dagger, stopping the attack just shy of Alexandra. As Pierre swings his arm, Alexandra deftly dodges the attack. She counters by grabbing his arm, stopping his blade with a defiant look. With a swift motion, Alexandra twists Pierre's wrist, attempting to disarm him. Pierre lands an elbow strike, knocking Alexandra back. Undeterred, Alexandra smirks, seemingly ready for more. As Pierre retrieves his dagger, Cyril brings a club down hard on his head with a loud thwack. Pierre stumbles, looking completely bewildered by the sudden attack. In a comical scene, Cyril leaps through the air to deliver a powerful blow as a stunned Alexandra watches. Alexandra covers her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief at what just happened. Dazed, bruised, and with a bloody nose, Pierre looks utterly defeated. Cyril stands over him, panicked, while Alexandra watches aghast from behind. Cyril strikes again, sending an already reeling Pierre falling to the ground. Alexandra runs forward, crying out Pierre's name in alarm. She rushes to his side, asking if he's okay, and worried that he was already injured upon his return. Holding the club, a thoroughly confused Cyril looks on as question marks appear around him. Pierre looks up from the ground, weakly asking Alexandra who the brave boy is. Alexandra gestures to the man on the ground, introducing him to Cyril as Pierre Gallion, her bodyguard. Turning to her bodyguard, she introduces Cyril as Arno's benefactor. Cyril stands awkwardly with his club, looking down with a troubled expression. Wiping his brow, Pierre realizes Cyril is the one who saved Vincent from the river. He breaks into a slightly pained but amused laugh. Pierre approaches a nervous Cyril, asking if he attacked him to protect Alexandra. He gently pats a surprised Cyril on the head. Pierre laughs heartily and ruffles Cyril's hair, praising him as an awesome and brave warrior. Completely baffled by the turn of events, Cyril stands frozen in confusion. Alexandra walks over, asking a bewildered Cyril if he was surprised by their reunion. She explains that Pierre is like an older brother to her and Vincent. As Pierre walks off, she explains that they greet each other by sparring to test their skills. Blushing slightly, Alexandra admits she couldn't beat him this time and mentions he'd been at war. She suddenly turns back, her eyes widening as she notices something and calls out Cyril's name. Rushing to his side, she takes his hand and anxiously asks if it's okay. She examines his hand closely, noting with concern that it still looks swollen. Alexandra gently holds his hand between both of hers, her touch full of care. Cyril looks at her with a soft, blushing expression as she tends to his injury. She continues to hold his hand gently, a quiet moment passing between them. As she holds his hand, Cyril's other hand gently touches hers, his fingers resting near the black pearl. Alexandra's eyes widen in surprise as she feels his touch and looks up at him. As Cyril blushes, Alexandra explains that she knows he only attacked Pierre because he thought she was in danger. She continues, playfully mentioning that she used to fight with Pierre and her younger brother Gaston all the time. Smiling warmly, she thanks Cyril, telling him he was just as reassuring as her brother. Cyril looks at her, his expression soft and dazed by her heartfelt words. He gently tightens his grip on her hand, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. Looking up, Cyril gives her a shy but genuinely happy smile, his face flushed. They stand together, holding hands, sharing a tender moment as yellow petals drift around them. Alexandra gazes at him, her expression filled with a gentle, thoughtful warmth. As she thinks about Cyril, he looks away, flustered and touching his lips. With a bright smile, Alexandra grabs his head, happily declaring it feels like she has a new younger brother. She then cheerfully ruffles his hair, confessing she'd been wanting to do it. The words younger brother echo in Cyril's mind, leaving him utterly shocked and horrified. Alexandra waves a cheerful goodbye, promising to see him the next day. Cyril watches quietly as she hums a tune and walks back toward the castle. He runs a hand through his now messy hair, still processing the confusing interaction. Cyril reflects on his vision in the river, believing it was a glimpse of the past now that Vincent is safe. Now that Vincent has recovered, Cyril recalls Alexandra's offer to escort them and looks down with firm resolve. He thinks to himself, worried that her escorting them will prevent her from training properly. Cyril clenches his fist with a determined expression. The scene shifts to a tent set up outside the castle walls at night. Inside, Pierre looks on with a serious, observant expression. Cyril stands before Pierre, stating that he has something to do. With a bead of sweat on his temple, Cyril's expression is one of pure determination. The view pulls back to show the vast castle under the light of a crescent moon. A brown-haired maid gently places a hood on a sleepy Alexandra, asking if tomorrow is a day off from training. The maid, Lucy, excitedly insists she'll be there at dawn to help with preparations, making Alexandra promise not to run off. With a comically intense glare, Lucy leans in close as Alexandra calmly asks her to stop staring so widely. While brushing Alexandra's hair, Lucy suggests that if she's truly sorry for running off, she should finally let her hair grow out. Lucy sighs, complaining to Alexandra about the difficulty of styling her short bob. She then reminds a pensive Alexandra about the engagement ceremony she needs to prepare for. A flashback reveals Alexandra was engaged at 15 and married in the winter a few years later. In his room, a weary Sir Robert sleeps fitfully in bed. Cyril enters Sir Robert's room, looking at a logbook by the bedside. Cyril observes Pierre training outside, realizing he still has time to train as long as Pierre hasn't given up his own dream of knighthood. He watches Pierre with a new sense of understanding and resolve. Cyril recalls the moment in the bathhouse when Sir Robert was washing his back. He remembers Sir Robert's somber expression during their conversation. A memory surfaces of Sir Robert kneeling respectfully before his king. The memory turns grim, showing a distraught Sir Robert in armor, clutching a bloody cloth and weeping. Cyril realizes that Sir Robert is the one who couldn't protect the king and queen. just as Pierre looks on with a heavy heart. The scene transitions to a sprawling view of the capital city of Sabranc in Lahoz. A noble couple stands before a purple-haired noblewoman, who demands they give her a firm promise. A man with black hair and a heavy gold chain, Count Corsica, smiles as he brings up Lady Alexandra of Arno. The Count sips his tea calmly as the couple watches him with apprehension. The couple, Baroness Rangdong and Sir Sover of House Arno, look deeply troubled by the conversation. Count Corsica casually mentions that his second son has just turned 16. The purple-haired woman slams her teacup down, demanding to know if the Baroness agrees with the Count's implication. She is identified as the Duchess of Arno, her expression showing her connection to the house. Count Corsica maintains his calm, smiling demeanor. The Duchess of Arno looks appalled, questioning whether a family arrangement should take priority over a national crisis. Alexandra reveals her husband, Zachary d'Arno, is commanding the front lines under the Sabranc royal banner. The Duchess of Arno listens intently, her expression unyielding. Count Corsica slyly remarks on the late king's unprecedented favor in securing Odeli's throne. The Count's smile turns into a look of cunning calculation. He then mentions Bianca de Arno, adding that even the Holy See, recognizing her as a saintess, won't change things. Count Corsica casually notes that the other nobles are also hesitant to send more troops to the war. The Duchess retorts that the fate of the entire country shouldn't fall solely on House Arno. With a menacing aura, Count Corsica proposes a swift and powerful alliance between their esteemed houses. The Duchess glares back at him, clearly unimpressed by his proposition. Her expression shifts to one of calm, strategic composure. The Count leans in, suggesting their children meet before finalizing any engagement. The Duchess agrees, formally extending an invitation for the Count and his son to visit the Arno estate. Count Corsica smiles, satisfied that his plan is moving forward. Later, walking through the garden, Sir Sover fumes to Baroness Rangdong about the Count's nerve. The Baroness angrily agrees, pointing out how outrageous it is to corner the Duchess while the Duke is indisposed. Sir Sover offers to make the Count disappear without a trace, but the Duchess, though reassured, tells him to wait for now. Her expression turns thoughtful as she contemplates her next move. Count Corsica reviews a map, noting that with a renewed threat from Aragon and lost allies, his house is now indispensable. The Duchess realizes the Count's game. He's forcing a marriage deal to secure the noble's support. Frustrated, the Duchess listens to remarks about Alexandra playing knight amidst the crisis. With a confident smile, the Duchess vows to show them all the masterpiece she and Zachary created. A few days later, the scene shifts to the sprawling d'Arno estate. An elegant hand reaches for a letter, sealed with red wax on a mantelpiece. With a quick slice of her dagger, Alexandra unseals the letter. She reads the contents of the letter as Sir Robert watches her expression. Alexandra reports that her mother has invited the Count and his son, telling her to demonstrate her full abilities. She looks down, anxiously wondering what kind of ability her mother expects her to show. She deduces they are coming to evaluate her as the d'Arno family. Alexandra looks over at Sir Robert, who listens with a calm, patient expression. Sir Robert reminds her that the Duchess had once proposed she serve as a squire in Corsica alongside his son, Gaston. He explains it was to meet her future husband, but Alexandra recalls her parents suddenly opposing the plan. She tells Sir Robert she's still confused by their change of heart, as they had always respected her choices. Sir Robert reveals the reason. In the meantime, the nation of Aragon had declared war. He explains the Duchess's original intent was the same as it is now, to showcase Alexandra's abilities. He believes the Duchess's motivation in writing this new letter is unchanged from her original plan. She contemplates the heavy expectation of being the daughter of Zachary, the hero, and Saint Bianca. Standing before a suit of armor, she wonders if she should simply show them who she truly is. With tears in her eyes and a firm grip on her sword, her resolve hardens. Sir Robert watches her, his expression one of quiet, supportive understanding. He pats her head gently, and she admits with a smile that she still has a long way to go. Smiling brightly, she declares her intent to take on the task of protecting d'Arno herself. She vows to protect her home with her own strength, not her husband's, just as her parents did. He looks at her with a gentle, knowing smile and begins to speak her name, Alex. He has a grim vision of a woman in red dying on a battlefield, believing Alex's life shouldn't end that way. Gasp! Alexandra jolts awake in bed, her eyes wide with terror from a nightmare. She clutches her nightgown, panting as the fear from the dream lingers. She sits up, a tear rolling down her cheek as she murmurs that it was only a dream. Exhausted, she lies back down, thinking she should try to sleep a little longer. She groans, dreading how the maids will burst in at dawn to help her dress. Mwah! Her eyes snap open, startled by a sudden, unexpected sound. In her room, a sleepless Alexandra sits up in bed, troubled by her thoughts. Elsewhere, Cyril trains tirelessly through the night, drawing his bow with intense concentration. An unseen person calls out for Sir Robert, who looks up with a serious expression. At the training grounds, Pierre watches Cyril and wonders why he is practicing at such a late hour. Sir Robert explains that Alexandra, unable to wield a sword with her injured arm, requested to learn archery for rehabilitation. He tells Pierre that while Alexandra claims not to remember, he's certain she has prior night training. Sir Robert praises her excellent concentration and notes that her physique is well-muscled from past training. He then grows flustered, realizing his clinical observation about her muscles sounds like something an old man would say. Sir Robert worries about how tired Alexandra must be from chasing nightmares all night. Pierre listens intently to Sir Robert's concerns, his gaze thoughtful. Sir Robert relays Alexandra's message for Cyril. She will handle her burdens herself so he can focus on his own night training. He acknowledges that Alexandra bears a heavy unseen burden of her own choosing. With a gentle smile, Sir Robert concludes that it's best to respect her decision. Pierre blushes slightly, moved by Sir Robert's words and understanding. Sir Robert approaches the exhausted Cyril, having expected the training to be grueling. Cyril gratefully acknowledges that Sir Robert has been an excellent teacher. As dawn breaks, the two stand together in a moment of quiet reflection after the long night's practice. Sir Robert pats Cyril's shoulder, declaring their training session over for the day. Two other trainees, Thomas and Jean, gossip about Cyril's surprisingly quick recovery from his injuries. Cyril panics as he recognizes Jean and Thomas as his previous bullies, terrified of another confrontation. Thump! A hand suddenly and firmly grabs Cyril's, stopping him in his tracks. Startled, Cyril turns to see who has taken his hand. It's Alexandra, dressed elegantly, who looks at him seriously and tells him to follow her. Looking flustered but obedient, a blushing Cyril is led away by Alexandra. Meanwhile, Thomas suggests teaching Cyril another lesson, but Jean warns him against provoking Sir Robert again. As the bullies argue, Alexandra pulls a blushing Cyril into a tight embrace, hiding them from view. Overwhelmed by their closeness, Cyril wonders if the frantic heartbeat he hears is his own or Alexandra's. His heart sinks as he remembers the harsh truth. Alexandra is engaged. Cyril looks up at her, stunned and confused by the sudden flood of emotions. He has a fleeting vision of her in regal attire, emphasizing the vast social distance between them. In his mind's eye, a beautifully adorned Alexandra looks on with serene composure. Back in the present, Alexandra warns him that Jean and Thomas are stubborn and not easily swayed. She advises him to avoid the two bullies for a while for his own safety. Smiling gently, Alexandra asks him to come with her for a moment. She introduces Cyril to Yvette, explaining she is her milk sibling and the daughter of her wet nurse. Yvette, a young girl in an apron, stands with a quiet and serious demeanor. Alexandra formally introduces Cyril to Yvette, whom she has told about him. Cyril is confused, wondering why Alexandra is suddenly introducing him to her wet nurse's daughter. Alexandra reveals she has asked Yvette a favor, to stop by the Count's house every morning. She explains that she knows Cyril has been tirelessly watching over his brother Vincent. Stunned, Cyril wonders how she knew about his late nights and early mornings. Taking his hand gently, Alexandra acknowledges the hardships he has faced since arriving. Cyril is deeply moved, though he still can't comprehend the source of her own anxiety. Alexandra offers him a wide, reassuring, and radiant smile. Holding his hand, she confesses that his presence and efforts have put her heart at ease. Lost in her gaze, Cyril is completely captivated by her heartfelt gratitude. Their hands remain clasped in a moment of tender connection as Yvette looks on. Cyril turns to look at Yvette, who is watching their clasped hands intently. Yvette silently observes how naturally he holds Alexandra's hand, leaving a flustered Cyril bewildered by her stare. As Yvette leans in with curious eyes, Cyril defensively thinks that he only held on because she grabbed him first. As he walks away, a blushing Cyril realizes Yvette is far too observant and resolves to be more careful. He walks on with a troubled and pensive expression, sweat beading on his brow. A dark memory flashes through his mind of a man with cold hands, recalling that his impatience was driven by the vividness of that dream. Still, he admits to himself that He was a little happy she recognized his efforts, thinking of Alexandra's gentle smile. Yvette watches the flustered Cyril with a sparkling, curious gaze. As Yvette beams at him, a flustered Cyril quickly agrees to her request, saying he'll be right there. A flashback begins, showing Cyril realizing that for Alexandra to survive, she needs to become more than a knight. She needs influence. In a vision of the throne room, a crowned, blonde-haired man recalls with shock that it was he who demanded Alexandra be sent to war. The crowned man turns to Count Corsica, asking in disbelief if he is being serious. Count Corsica looks back with a confident, knowing smirk. The king stands in shock, questioning the Duchess d'Arno's sanity for wanting to send Alexandra to the vanguard of a losing war. Count Corsica calmly refutes the idea, stating that while Alexandra may have trained as a knight, she is not fit to lead an army. He points out that the king, having roots in Castilla, should be well aware of their history. The count summons the tale of Saint Daniela of Castilla, a warrior who fought in a 100-year war. He explains how Daniela, a common country girl, answered God's call and single-handedly ended the war. He then reminds them of a glowing image of Saint Bianca holding her child Alexandra. The count argues that if the daughter of a national hero and a saint leads the army, it will change everything. With a crazed look, he continues his manipulative speech, imagining a powerless woman donning armor to lead. He triumphantly asks the court if everyone wouldn't praise her as the second coming of Saint Daniela. Feigning concern, Count Corsica claims he isn't at ease sending his daughter-in-law to battle, but places his faith in the God who sent them saints before. The king clenches his fist, recognizing the count's sophistry but feeling trapped by his argument. The other nobles, swayed by the count's clever plan, declare it God's will, and demand the king order Alexandra to the front. Defeated, the king collapses to the floor as a man with brown hair offers him a glass of wine. The brown-haired man smiles with sinister satisfaction as he holds the wine glass. In the present, Cyril is haunted by a voice warning him that the ones who killed him and Alexandra are on the move. He grimly reflects on Count Corsica's son, realizing he's the kind of man who uses and discards a bride to suit his plans. An image of a smiling Emilio de Corsica, the count's son, appears as Cyril identifies his cruel nature. Cyril hardens his resolve, deciding he must help Alexandra become a knight and build a base of support. He gazes at the distant castle, thinking he must act if the opportunity arises. Surrounded by thorny red roses, his eyes burn with a new, dark purpose: to kill Count Corsica himself. A horrifying vision flashes of Emilio de Corsica pouring a chalice over the body of a slain white-haired woman. Cyril draws his bow, his eyes narrowed with lethal intent as he vows to kill the count with his own hands. He lowers his weapon, his expression a mixture of sorrow and grim determination. Sir Robert places a hand on his shoulder, telling him to stop training for the day. Startled from his thoughts, Cyril looks up in confusion. Sir Robert smiles, explaining they're finishing early because the sun hasn't risen yet. He clarifies that since Arno is in the northern part of Sevron, the morning starts later than usual. Sir Robert continues his explanation with a friendly smile. Cyril smiles back as Sir Robert advises him to prepare warm clothes for the coming freezing weather. Sir Robert warns him that his bullies, Thomas and Jean, will also be at dawn training and offers him a bow for protection. Cyril's expression falls as he listens to the unwelcome news. Carrying his bow, Cyril walks away, wondering why guests are coming, while the lord and lady are absent. He finds the timing suspicious as it coincides with the end of the harvest and the collection of rent. Arriving at a small house, Cyril peeks inside, where Alexandra welcomes him. An old man with a monocle addresses Yvette, with Cyril watching from behind. The man confirms with Yvette that Count Corsica and his son are expected before All Saints' Day. Yvette explains that the Duchess invited them and that Alexandra will greet them on her mother's behalf. Cyril's hand tightens on his bow, his expression darkening as he hears the news. He realizes with grim certainty that his opportunity has arrived sooner than expected, as Count Corsica is coming to Arno. The scene shifts to an overhead view of the training grounds, where knights clash with their swords. The scene opens on an archery target, its surface pristine and untouched by arrows. Alexandra, with her back to the viewer, stands in the training grounds, gazing toward the empty target. Turning, her expression is one of slight worry and contemplation. She asks Pierre if Cyril has stopped his morning practice, and he confirms the target is clean. Pierre explains that Cyril now practices alone to avoid the other squires who arrive at dawn. A gentle smile forms on Alexandra's face as she processes this information, murmuring that she understands. Pierre looks at her with a teasing, curious expression while wiping his sword. He observes that she seems quite relieved to hear Cyril is still practicing archery, which she happily confirms. Beaming with excitement, Alexandra clenches her fist as Pierre adds that Cyril hopes to become a knight. In her thoughts, she reflects on Cyril as a mysterious boy who just happened to end up in her territory. A bright, warm smile spreads across her face as she thinks about this realization. She recalls that it felt as if Cyril was running right beside her, his hand on her shoulder. In her mind's eye, she imagines herself running alongside a determined, blushing Cyril. A vision appears of a younger, blonde-haired Cyril, thinking how an item he gave away for his father's fortune returned to give him courage. Back in the present, Alexandra blushes, smiling softly at the encouraging thought. She tells Pierre they will proceed with welcoming Count Corsica and his son, asking him to take charge of training the riders. Pierre agrees, thinking to himself that the Count has no idea what kind of woman his future daughter-in-law truly is. With a confident smile and crossed arms, Pierre seems ready for the challenge. Alexandra's expression hardens with resolve as she vows to show her fiancé and his father her true power. A carriage, escorted by armed knights, makes its way through a forest road. Inside the carriage, a young man with black hair, identified as Ion de Corsica, asks his father if the castle is far. Count Corsica gestures out the window, telling his son to admire the fertile lands of Arno. The Count explains with a satisfied smile that Arno is unique among Sevron's lands for its vast farmlands. Ion listens intently as his father adds that the land is even suitable for forestry. Smiling paternally, Count Corsica tells Ion that this land will be his to rule once he marries Alexandra. The procession of horses and the carriage continues its journey with a clatter of hooves. A rider in a dark cloak, Cyril, gallops toward the approaching carriage. Looking at the reflection in the carriage window, Cyril asks if the man inside is Count Corsica. Alexandra, clad in shining armor and mounted on a horse, greets the carriage with a confident smile. She formally introduces herself as Alexandra, the Lady of House Arno, much to their surprise. From atop her horse, she declares that the Knights of Arno will escort their carriage to the castle. In a sweeping view, Alexandra announces that she is the daughter of House Arno, and her knights will provide their escort. Among the mounted knights, Sir Robert smiles proudly, while Cyril looks on with nervous apprehension. Alexandra maintains a confident, steady gaze from her horse, asserting her authority. Peeking from the carriage window, a shocked Ion de Corsica internally fumes at her outrageously rude, armed welcome. The Knights of Arno, a formidable force, completely surround the Corsica carriage and their smaller escort. A startled Ion looks on as Alexandra calmly rides up to the carriage door. As Ion calls out in shock, Count Corsica exits the carriage, a slight smile on his face. Alexandra looks down from her horse, her expression calm and unreadable. Count Corsica gazes up at the armored Alexandra with a pleased and intrigued smile. Leaning down, Count Corsica takes Alexandra's gloved hand and kisses it, offering his respects to the Lady of Arno. The now combined procession of Arno knights and the Corsica carriage rides onward. From his window, a silent and troubled Ion watches Sir Robert and the other Arno knights. Count Corsica turns to his son and asks what is troubling him so much. Ion flinches, blushing and flustered by his father's direct question. He thinks to himself that her welcome with armed riders is an insult worthy of them turning back. Ion nervously touches his ear, still reeling from the unexpected show of force. In a dark, menacing vision, Count Corsica grips Ion's shoulder, commanding him to open his eyes and look closely. He points out that while her men carry swords and bows, they wear no armor, a detail Ion can see on Sir Robert outside the window. Count Corsica calmly refutes his son's anger, explaining that Alexandra's armed welcome is for their safety in a vulnerable, lordless land. He adds that she came personally despite not yet being a knight, a sign of her strong character. The Count kneels before his son, his manipulative lecture leaving Ion stunned and speechless. He recounts how, 15 years ago, Arno was invaded by the traitor Jacob while the Duke was away at war. A vision appears of the late Duchess Bianca, who valiantly defended the estate until her husband, the Duke, returned. The Count concludes that Alexandra is simply following her mother's example, displaying a powerful sense of sovereignty. Ion touches his chin, his father's words clearly having an effect on him. He watches his father's reflection, thinking the Count has taken a surprising liking to the reckless girl. Smiling with satisfaction, the Count confirms his interest, stating she will inherit all of Arno for his son. The carriage, now escorted by Alexandra, arrives at the Grand Castle gates. A stern-looking man with white hair and a kind-faced woman with brown hair await their arrival. As Count Corsica and Eon disembark, the white-haired man steps forward to greet them. Count Corsica speaks warmly to the white-haired man, presumably the acting steward. From the crowd of servants, Ion internally notes that Count Corsica looks younger than he remembers. Among the onlookers, a blonde-haired Cyril stares intently, his expression grim. A bead of sweat rolls down Cyril's face as he watches the man he intends to kill. Cyril reflects on his improved accuracy, realizing with a jolt that he has never shot a living creature before. He looks down at his trembling hands, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. His thoughts spiral as he confronts the terrifying reality of taking a human life. As Count Corsica walks by, Cyril questions if it is forgivable to kill someone simply to fulfill his own desire. Cyril flinches as a vision of a smiling, white-haired Alexandra flashes before his eyes. Alexandra, in full armor, shows a flustered Ion the way, who thanks her as he internally recognizes her. A blushing Ion internally identifies himself in a fluster, thinking, "That's Ion, Alexandra's fiancé." Cyril watches them walk together, his gaze turning cold and resolute. He clenches his wrist, wondering what Ion was doing while Alexandra was being slandered and abandoned on the battlefield. Cyril's hand tightens, his knuckles white with suppressed rage. With a tormented expression, he steels his resolve. His eyes burn with determination as he decides he must go through with it. Alexandra turns, her gaze sweeping over the crowd as Cyril quickly looks away to avoid being seen. Cyril keeps his head down, remaining hidden among the other servants. Alexandra scans the area with a serious expression, Count Corsica standing behind her. Cyril finalizes his plan. He will kill Count Corsica during the hunting festival in 2 days, making it look like a stray arrow. In a dark hallway, a hooded Cyril stops the Count, stating there is something troubling he must ask him about. Count Corsica smiles, requesting the help of Cyril as someone familiar with the lands of Arno. With a sinister smile, the Count reveals his own plan. An execution will take place during the hunting festival, 2 days from now.